just don't have that
No.
feel. And then they go out and do it again. They're like, really? While you were out, that actually was a crime of mine.
And also like how they like surrounded their houses with guns and stuff like that.
Did he really?
Yeah, to bring them in.
For
For bribes.
really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. From a private school. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I'm just like, I can't.
It's messed up.
It is messed up. But at the same time, though, I mean, so I would say it was so much harder to get into UCLA than to be in UCLA.
I was kind of surprised about UCLA.
Yeah.
They get so much money from the state. Like,
Well,
what do you
Were they
think?
one of them?
Yeah.
Apparently, they're the only private school public school
Yeah.
on the list,
Right.
which is
but
like
they're really quiet about it.
Well, I thought USC was
they're a private school.
public as well.
No.
Because it's University of Southern California, so I
Yeah.
figured it was a California school. Yeah, no, I didn't realize UCLA. All I've heard about is USC,
Right.
and I think Berkeley.
Stanford, Berkeley.
Yeah, Stanford,
Yeah.
Well, Berkeley's public.
University of Texas.
Berkeley's public.
Yeah.
Texas. Texas is a public school. I saw University of Texas.
Oh, there was a Texas school. I thought it was all California schools.
It seems like it would be all California schools.
So I went to easy to get in colleges that I knew I was a shoo-in for because.
Well, I was not expecting to get into, UCLA. I was really decision to San Luis Obispo,
Oh, that.
and I weaseled my way out.
Really? You didn't like
UCLA.
that?
Well, I mean, to get into
I
UCLA.
got into
Oh,
UCLA.
you weren't expecting it.
And I wasn't
Oh,
expecting it, and
I
so
thought you were like, I hate it.
no, I weaseled my way out because
Yeah, exactly.
it just felt like one of those schools if you get in, you figure it out.
Yeah. I applied to 10 colleges. And I got into all 10.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
I'm just like,
You should have left it a little higher. It sounds like.
I went to like the easiest school to get into because I'm just like, I don't want to go too far from home. I don't want to mess with debt. And
Yeah.
then I just transferred after 2 years anyway.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then got into a shitload of debt because
Right.
an eighth of a mile over the border was considered out of state.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I lived an eighth of a mile from the border of Vermont. So
Oh.
when I went to the Vermont school after the New York school, they
Yeah.
considered me out of state.
Parents
Oh
didn't pay-
gosh.
parents didn't pay taxes into it. It's about taxes, not area.
Mm.
No, but see, the funny thing is we do because both my parents worked in Vermont, paid Vermont state taxes. I worked in Vermont, paid Vermont state taxes.
Interesting.
And everything that we do and purchase is in Vermont because the Vermont town is the closest town to us, not the New York town. So everything we did was Vermont.
Okay.
And now they have a buffer zone. So if you live within like 5 miles of the border, you can go to a Vermont state school as an in-state.
Okay.
But of course, it's not retroactive. They won't give me back
I
mine.
remember my roommate was from Oregon, and he would complain incessantly about, because if you're out of state, USC and UCLA are the same price. It's like 25 grand tuition,
Exactly.
and then like 40 grand to actually like live and go
Yeah.
there, instead of being like 12 grand tuition, and like
It cost me 30
25.
grand to go to Castleton per year. If I was in-state, it would have cost me about 12,
yeah,
if that.
yeah,
And I didn't even live on campus. That was just tuition
right.
because I commuted.
Wow. That's so ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Whereas my New York State school cost me like 12 grand for the 2 years that I went there. And I lived there.
Oh,
Call it outrageous.
Yeah.
But I just love how everybody's like all outraged and surprised about all this. I'm like, it's been going on forever.
I was like, I thought they always bought their way in.
They do.
Always.
They just do it in a more legal way.
But I mean, this was like a stupid way, so maybe that's the outrage. Like, I can't believe you actually paid someone to proctor your test. You just go write a check to the school.
Yeah, do it the easy way.
It's probably a lot more expensive.
Well, I'm sure it is, yeah, if you have to buy a building.
Yeah.
But even still, I mean, if you offer them a $500,000 donation and then still pay your kids tuition,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like you're losing anything.
What do they care? It's one slot,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
Half the kids are going to be gone their sophomore year anyway. So like overcrowd your freshmen.
And now they're doing class action suits on it, which I think is hilarious because there's no way that you can prove that that one slot was denied to you
Exactly.
because they paid their way in. Like,
That's unreal.
I don't know how you do a class action. I don't know why you would take a class action like that.
Oh.
It's gotta be so hard to prove.
Also, the school seems a little bit, unless you can show negligence, is that like the issue? I mean,
I don't think it's never. I think it would be just from.
well, they're almost, but on that level, the school's almost like a victim themselves.
Not for taking the bribe.
The school's not taking any bribe.
Well, no. Supposedly
coaches and proctors.
they
and
paid
whatever,
the
right?
proctors like a couple $10,000s to proctor the test, but then they also paid the school like a certain amount of money to admit them.
Okay.
So it's like a multi-tiered thing. But even still,
It's like government in a Latin American country. You have to grease every level.
You just have to get your foot in the door, right? And then you keep going. Oh my god. Oh
here's
wow.
10,000 for you. Here's 10,000 for you. Oh, here's 500,000 for you.
I don't want to hear this.
You're in! Yay!
Oh wow.
And it's just like because the one lady's daughter like doesn't even like school and doesn't want to be at school, and your mom's gonna get thrown in jail and you don't even
I don't
care.
even care about school. I like the parties. That's what she said. She's like, oh, this is awful. And I mean, why couldn't they just be like the Kardashians, where they're like, you know what, you don't need college to be a multimillionaire,
You just gotta,
right?
It's true.
you just gotta get plowed on camera,
Exactly.
and then have your mom charge people to put it
I
out.
mean, they weren't trying to get into schools. They're like, you don't need it. I'm a
Not at that
billionaire.
point,
You
no.
got a bachelor's. I'm a billionaire. That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still will now once they get kicked out of school.
Yeah. Right? It might make them more popular. Although, like,
Although she just got dropped from the Hallmark channel, so there goes her income stream. And I'm sure Fuller House is gonna get canceled,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just gonna be a shit show.
I'll get into USC.
At least with the other family, William H. Macy still has his show and is still making a boatload of money.
Yeah.
Although I think he's supposed to be leaving Shameless.
Oh, really?
Because I know
My brother loves that show.
the girl who plays Fiona is leaving.
Uh-huh.
And I think Cameron Monaghan's leaving too. There's a bunch of them that are leaving that show already. Yeah.
My brother is so twisted. So my mom was like sick in the hospital and he's like crying and stressed out. He's like, have you ever seen the show Shameless? I'm like, are you really gonna do this right here? He's like, I want you to go home and watch it tonight. I'm like, I don't think I will. He's so
Have you ever watched it? You should. It's hilarious.
That's exactly what my brother said. He's like, you need to watch this show.
It is hilarious. It is raunchy as hell.
Yeah, he's
but-
like, don't watch when the kids are
Yeah, don't watch it when the kids are home. But
Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure you see like 3 penises and like 4 people having sex in the first episode.
Oh my god. That is so funny. But yeah, I was just like, I love my brother's advice.
While you're at the hospital.
Oh my god. And I'm like, don't leave me with my brother. Oh, poor thing. But no, my mom is better. And I still didn't watch Shameless. I'm still boycotting it. But I will now.
No, it's actually really good.
Yeah.
It's just really raunchy and depressing, and but it makes you appreciate your.
That's what he was trying to convey. He's like, just watch it.
And I just started watching Game of Thrones. Oh, finally.
I've never seen one. But it's good?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I've watched the first like 2 seasons in a week.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you what I've been watching. Because then you're going to think like I'm one of the golden girls. But I love The Crown. Have you guys watched
I have
it?
not watched it. I've thought about starting it because I've heard that it's good, but
So, well, I mean, I don't know if you like history. It's really well done.
It's at 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
The Crown? Oh yeah. It's my favorite. I like to watch Game of Thrones. I just don't know like when I would start.
it is graphic.
Is it
Like,
like blood and stuff? Because I don't do well.
there's one episode where they just cut a horse's head off and you just see it.
Oh my god. You're like, I never wanted to know what that looked like.
And then, I mean, there's other episodes where they have like halves of horses all around, and like they just show you everything,
Oh,
and like heads get chopped off, and you see everything.
yeah.
And, like,
They're not real.
I heard it was graphic, but I'm just like, damn. Some of these death scenes, I'm just like, what?
They're not real. It's okay, man.
I know it's not real, but still.
My husband thinks I'm so weird because I love true crime,
Yeah.
but fake stuff, I'm like, I can't watch.
Like Law and
I don't
Order?
want to see any blood. Well,
Oh, like
that,
fake
the
stuff?
mass- Yeah,
Oh.
you know, yeah, exactly. Like just
Yeah.
mass murderers. Like, what is in your mind? I like that part of it, but I'm like, well, I'm not watching them kill someone. I'm just finding out like what they did and why.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only I've never seen like
Do you want me to put the PowerPoint up there for you?
yeah, if you could, that'd be awesome. I've never seen like a Freddy Krueger movie or
See, neither have I, but I also don't like horror movies.
yeah.
I laugh at them more than they scare me.
I don't need those ideas.
I just laugh at them.
Yeah.
The only ones that I like to watch are like Saw. And it's because there's suspense. Like, it's not like someone's coming to kill you and stuff. It's like, you gotta figure your way out of this.
I saw the first Saw,
I love the Saw movies.
but I didn't see the rest of them. I get scared. I mean, that's just the reality.
You guys
It's
know.
super scary.
I
Yeah, totally.
I like to research like mass murders, you know,
Yeah.
just before I go to bed. And you know that guy that killed his family in Colorado?
The Shannon Watts.
Yeah. So I'm like researching, reading everything I can read about it because I just thought, oh my god, that could be anybody's spouse, right? That just flips out. And then I see their house for sale. And I'm like, oh, there's their address. Oh, there's a phone number. I called the phone number and I got the voicemail and it's like, hey, it's Chris, I'm not available. I'm like, dang it! I freaked myself out. I'm like, oh my god, the FBI, they're gonna be calling me. Am I the other girlfriend? I'm never gonna do that again.
So my mom, because she grew up in Long Island,
Oh yeah.
my grandfather almost bought the Amityville Horror House
No.
because it was such a good price. And
I love it.
my aunt and one of my aunts and my grandma were like, "There's no way in hell you're going to live in that house." And my mom's like, "I'd be all for it."
That was too funny. It feels so much later than it is.
It's actually earlier, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens when I get here like an hour early. I'm like, yeah, it's not even 6 o'clock. That would have been so funny to buy that house because of the big deal.
Good deal, man. It's a good deal. Well, that's my grandfather.
Like, you'll get used to it. Right? Because ghosts and spirits can't kill you. They can just scare you, right?
Right. Well, no, I guess if you watch some of those movies, they can kill you, I guess.
Really? So I just thought the reading this week was like more complicated than it needed to be.
Really?
I thought so.
I just didn't like the one case because I don't like how they give us all these cases and they're like, oh, well, that's not the law anymore.
Right. It's like, don't confuse me. I don't have time for that. Because, you know, like when you're sitting and taking a test, you're like, wait, was that the law? Or did they say that's no longer the law?
Yeah, exactly.
Not late, I swear.
Hey, no, you're right on time. And we have pie.
See?
Dive in.
That's less than the bell, right? The final topic.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you do the Barbary schedule?
I haven't signed up for it yet. Why was it like? I mean, it even has like away stuff and.
Well,
It's-
the Barmax schedule started already.
Did it?
I think it's programmed since like March.
Schedule's now available.
It's whatchamacallit, it's 3.5 to 4 hours a day, except for some of them that are 8 or 12 hours for the day. And those are like the simulated NBEs and like how to take them.
Are you?
Yeah.
So you have to pick one of these locations?
No, you can do it online too. Like if you scroll down more, it says online.
When does it start for you guys? When does it start?
I need to shake this off. I feel like within public and everything, and then this, I feel like I'm like,
Are you
know?
back in public defenders?
what's that?
Are you back in public
Sort of. A little bit of a story to that. So basically, last week I sent Tom an email like inquiring about like, you know, well, I got an email yesterday with him attached from Riverside asking for a resume. And then I found out today from Cy that I'm already on the list over there. That's coming in the summer.
Like it's a good go.
Way to bribe your way in.
I worked there for free
Wow.
for 2 years.
And
So
maybe
you're gonna
it's
work there for
donation.
free again.
That was a huge donation. Well, a year and a half, not 2 years.
I don't know. 2 years for free at the public defender's office, probably like what, $20,000?
That's not gonna be a bribe.
I would have lot of motions. Thank you. And my motions were worth $12.
Oh my God.
Chocolate pie, is that what it is? Looks good.
Oh yeah, it's a chocolate silk pie. I was gonna get a picture of you guys and send it to Irene. So I was bragging about you guys.
What? I think you said something retiring. I'm like, wait.
It's gonna get a
Are
picture.
you gonna like blackmail us because we're eating in the room?
Oh, are we not supposed to?
No.
Oh, I brought tacos, onion rings.
I
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm on camera.
Is there?
I won't send it to Irene. Oh no, I already threw mine away.
We did,
I
okay.
already ate, so that's all yours.
So we have like for when I drop it, we'll be like, does not really that scene
No,
not
oh, you know, post some science in here.
Professor Killer did it?
No food or drink.
Well, what it was is Sheila used to bring in like pizza and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
It was like-
smell up the whole
Well, it
place.
smelled the whole place, but it would also like, it was before they had the glass on the tables. So
Oh,
then you get like the white marks from the heat.
oh my
And John and Irene are like, it's not gonna go away.
God. Okay, I didn't do that.
No.
Oh my gosh.
The pizza was nice though, it was cool.
That is really cool.
So good.
I know. So today I've had banana cream, cherry, apple, and now the chocolate silk.
And
Is that
for
the
dinner,
courthouse?
you
Yeah,
have
I know. At the courthouse, all they do is give me food. Like, here, eat this.
but from the court.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, because nobody else can bring you in food,
Oh
right?
yeah, no. But all the employees love to eat. That's like the only thing we do. We go in a quarter, like just eat as much pie to get away from the people we're helping. Exactly. Actually, that is us to a T. Oh my god.
But isn't you can sue and get money for that now.
Mm-hmm.
So So you didn't sign up for one of these away-ins, did you?
No, like if you scroll down.
Yeah, it's down here. Online.
Yeah, I did the online only. I ain't going anywhere for Barbara.
It seems like
Where
that's.
would you have to go? I remember one was
There's
in
like
San Diego.
A bunch of places in LA.
Yeah. Oh. Oh yeah. But
Well-
you would have to go every day?
That's like every day, 3.5 to 4 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm not even near here, will it?
And I heard, because I looked them up online, that
May 22nd.
all they do is show the videos.
Oh, so it's like online.
So they said it's better to do the online anyways.
Oh yeah.
It's like going to Fleming's and just watching the Fleming's video.
That's so annoying. Yeah.
Oh,
I hated that. We went. We had like a Fleming's review after getting the audio CDs, and I listened to them, in my car every day, just like had them playing instead of the radios, like something
Right.
that
That's a smart thing to do.
And then we went to the Fleming's review, and it was verbatim.
Oh.
It was.
There was a video.
It
wasn't even happening.
What difference is it was a video, but it was verbatim. It was the exact same.
No, it was
It was the exact same.
Oh my god. How long
After
did you
arguing, they
sit
stopped
in?
sending them, I think.
Oh wow.
It was 4 days.
Oh, 4 days of a video like that.
I only went to 2 because work wouldn't give me the time off.
Oh,
But,
and you're
yeah.
like, I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
I have an excuse now. Oh, wow. And I bet that's really expensive too.
I think that's why they stopped sending them.
Why does Stanford have their own online?
Because it's Stanford.
I'm like, this is what you bribe us for.
Because they pay $500,000 to go there, so they get their own special.
What's the money's for?
I'm not even.
Good, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. I was gonna try to get you guys out of here early tonight, so you could study.
That's cool. We
Yeah,
should just do the review and then
yeah. I was thinking like,
we can make up for it next week.
if you guys just wanna like shout out the rule to your case and we'll do the You're like, these cases were not that clear cut.
I didn't even know they had cases.
Yeah, I didn't
Did
know
you
either.
send us?
I'm really worried about it. I even texted them. What you said? Oh, I gotta pull over to do my cases as well. I was like,
You're like, uh-oh.
I mean, I think they're gonna get you real quick. I'm like, I didn't bring the book in. I was like, it's your music. All right.
I love it. No, that's fine. That's fine. Enjoy it. Like, eat some more pie for like 20 more minutes.
Can you maybe double it up next week?
No, it's fine.
I mean, I can do that, obviously, because I'm the only one who reads.
We just switch seats. It'll be fine.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, if you want to shout out the rule.
I can.
Yeah,
Don't get married. Don't
Don't
get
get
married.
has this really changed?
I just have to, like,
Yeah,
Read them
just
up a little bit.
yeah, that's fine.
That's why this is amazing. How fast can you do all cases?
Will and Victor.
I even said, I'm like, oops. Like, in my deathbed.
I don't know, I didn't email you guys, did I?
No. I just looked. I was like, I don't remember which case is even
I
mine.
mean, it's been that kind of week where it's like, okay, they need an essay for Saturday, they need midterms, they need the sample. I'm like, I have so much homework. I was like a law student for the week. Oh, by the way, I did get your sample. I mean, your essays last week, and they were very well done. So I was really impressed. I love how you guys organized them. So
I was a little worried about it.
no, and I like went through the points and everything, and I really like how you guys discuss things, even if you don't think it applies, and you're like, but I don't really think this applies, you know. So I do like. I was like, what was it mean?
That's Vincent.
I wasn't going to say anything. Just enjoy the light.
Just copy and paste his answer.
I don't even remember, like, what I said. Oh, there it is.
But I didn't have any concern about how you guys present your essays at all. It was very well done.
Mine was only 8 pages.
Yours was the longest one.
I'm sure it was.
That's usually how it goes.
It was gonna like put their hand up for the 2-page.
This is me.
That's probably yours because you came in late on Saturday.
Oh. It doesn't matter, as long as you covered the topics in the law.
Well, like 6. That's, well, actually 5. This last one is actually just no.
I know.
Okay, so the one thing that I had, did you write that one?
I did.
Okay, so what did you mean by like, what advice would you give her? Because I was just kind of like,
It was so open.
yeah.
You just go with it.
So just basically
go with it.
anything?
Yeah, and that fact pattern was actually based on someone that came to see me. And so I'm like, you know what, it's good. It's like a practice performance exam essentially. It's like someone comes in and tells you all their mess, and then they say, I don't know what I need to do. So that's exactly what you guys did. You kind of broke it issue by issue, and then the law, and then what your advice would be. Not that like your advice would be wrong, but I just wanted you to kind of see when people come in and they just dump their mess on your table. And you're trying to organize it, so you guys did exactly what I wanted.
Okay. Because I figured you were the one that wrote it, and I'm like, well, that's probably kind of what the midterm's gonna be like. So I was like, I don't really know what you mean by advice, because I'm just, and then in chronological order, I was just kind of like,
Yeah, that was the
that was the hard part. Is I was like, I don't know what you mean by chronological order. 'Cause
Yeah.
it all
because-
kind of just meshes together, other than go back in time and get a prenup. I
Right.
mean,
Well, and the only reason I threw that in there was just to kind of give you a hint, like, remember, she has to get divorced first from her husband. That was the chronological order, is divorce, and then the rest of the, see if you can get about a prenup with this guy, if not a Marvin action, and you guys all covered that.
We still need some more facts, because if she's getting alimony from her previous marriage, you don't want her divorced, because then she'll stop getting that money.
Yeah, and I like to keep them more broad so you guys can really just kind of show off what you know, instead of just kind of pigeonhole you and I just want this answer. But because when you're in private practice, that's exactly what it is. You have to think of all these possibilities. Yeah. It sucks. That's stressful. Like I had someone come in today and she's like, my brother abducted my sister. I'm like, well, I can't help you unless it was your spouse or your significant other that abducted your child. So then I had to go through the whole scenario and realize, okay, you probably need a guardianship for your sister. She's 15. And send her to probate. But it's just like, oh my gosh, these fact patterns are crazy. Yeah.
And like, well, how much advice can you give at the Family Justice Center?
Not too much.
Yeah, that's
What I can do is
help you fill out the forms.
right, help you fill out the forms, give you your options, and tell you could do this, this, and this, or like today I'm like, it sounds like you probably need the guardianship of your 13-year-old sister. We can't give you custody in family law, that kind of thing. So, I mean, that is legal advice, but it's general legal advice. I can give general legal advice. But if I say, well, how you're going to win your case is, then I've crossed the line. Because if her brother walked in and said, I need help, I just abducted my 13-year-old sister, I got to give them the same options. Like, oh, you might, pursue a guardianship. So I sometimes see both sides of the coin, like back to back.
Oh, interesting. So how do you deal with that as an attorney?
I usually let them stay in. So because I don't give legal advice, just like legal opinions as to what they can do.
Okay.
They'll come in, and so like one will be in front of me, and then the ex will walk in, and because there's no confidentiality and no advice, I just have them stay in there and hear it together.
So you're not technically their individual attorney. Okay.
Just there to help them fill out forms.
Exactly. It's like a blessing and a curse because then they're not my client.
Right.
So it's amazing not to get phone calls, 2 a.m. and texts and all that stuff. By the way, don't ever give out your cell phone.
Do you ever
Just
get those
don't.
moments where you're just like, I know the answer?
Yes, that's the hard part. And a lot of times, the people that come in are just challenging. I had to keep explaining to this man today, you need 2 envelopes for your ex and 1 for you. 2 for your ex, 1 for you. 2 for me? No, 2 for your ex, 1 for you. I can't believe I have to do this so much. And then he got about it, he's like, so write my name, no, write your ex's name.
2 for you.
I wrote it on a note. It wasn't like he's having to memorize it. I know. It can be a real challenge.
You see the people before they went to you, they're just like they're just digging at me for answers because they see I'm studying or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just really want different answers. They go to law school, right? You know this. I'm like, I'm like, stop trying to get free advice out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lady that chewed me out because she's like, well, I don't want to pay a lawyer, $300 an hour for this. I'm like, why would you want to pay someone to for the answer? Take $300.
Right.
And if she made a complaint, you could.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
You could have someone without a license, and the bar could shut you down.
Exactly. That's why I kind of walked away. I was like, I can't help you. I just ended up saying, I don't know.
I've had to say no to people before.
Uh-huh.
That, like, sorry, I'm not an attorney, and if
Right.
I gave you advice about what I sort of know,
Yeah.
the bar would not allow me to be a part of the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I say.
Just always refer them to legal aid. Although what I understand is a lot of people don't qualify for legal aid, even if they're like very poor. So it's just like, but I know I have the same problem too when like you want to be helpful and you're like, too much help. Gotta bring it back.
You want me to?
Oh yeah, are you ready for Wilcox?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want to just do rules or?
Yeah, just do rules.
Okay. So Wilcox basically says that a spouse who secretly withholds funds can have an action to get back those funds. It's basically like a partnership where one spouse cannot hide funds from another and then expect them to just be their separate property.
Mm-hmm.
This after they divorced, or?
Well, no, this was during the marriage. He took community funds and put them in a separate account without her knowledge, and then she found out about it and she said, no, I want half of it because they're community, and he said, no, I have management over the funds because this was back before when husbands had.
Yeah.
How long after? So, do you know how long after divorce you can discover this?
2 years, you said, right? For fraud?
For fraud, to come back, unless it was just never discussed at all. So like an omitted asset, let's say there's a pension that nobody listed, no judgment on it, and then someone finds out about it, you can always come back and say, oh, we forgot to talk about the pension. And it's just an omitted asset. But if you're like fraudulent covering it up, then you have 2 years to set aside your judgment.
So, would you have to bring up notice of the divorce about this concern? Because I have I guess, I don't know, he's like a distant relative, some kind of uncle. But he thinks his wife is like hiding money in the form of giving his sister like $10,000 a month.
Oh my God.
And that she's investing it somewhere else.
Oh,
holding onto it.
Probably, yeah. He can always ask for an accounting too.
And then she would have to justify why you're giving this money away.
Yeah, that's a big amount.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be kind of, usually when people try to siphon off money, it's like $50, $20.
Not as
you know,
much.
This is
like 10,000, you know, like $100 maybe with the Target, you know. But yeah, he could definitely ask for an accounting of that. And then if you ever saw a family law judge, he just needs the records to
so
show.
she would have to justify why she's giving her sister this much money.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine.
Because I think she wanted to do like a venture, but he didn't want to do the venture, so
Right.
she went on her own by giving
Right.
the money away.
Yeah, he could definitely at least ask for half of it back because that's his.
And if it turns out because I was thinking like if it turns out she like invested in the venture,
Uh-huh.
then would half the venture be his, the
Mhm.
community's anyway,
Right.
the whole thing, not
The
just that she
whole
invested.
thing, if it was open during marriage, yeah, the whole thing. So a lot of times people do that, but just as a way to kind of, like you said, hide money.
Mhm.
Like we're opening a business and it takes a lot of money to start up a business and they're just kind of sitting on the stockpile of money. But, and he just needs to make sure like his accounts are safe, you know,
Yeah.
so she's not going and withdrawing like their joint account
Yeah.
thing.
'Cause I think she makes her own money,
Mm-hmm.
but like she knows like the paycheck she's been depositing is a lot smaller than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, well, where's the community money? You know, it's like, did
Mhm.
you get paid less? Or you work at the same job?
Right. And she's Does she ever admit to what she's doing, or is that his sister?
It was a third party
Uh-huh.
admission. Like their daughter
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh yeah, my mom's giving away money to my aunt to invest to this other, or she's not giving. She's in." They kept like the daughter confessed to the whole thing.
Right.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, it could be a money maker, the business, and he'd be entitled not to half of it if she's in it with the sister, but like a quarter, 25% of it. His sister would get half, she'd get half, and he'd get
or
half.
his
of
share of his share of whatever she put in of the venture.
Right, if it's not making money.
Or
But if it is like a profitable business, he could ask for 25% of it because it's still community.
or his share, because I
Or
don't know
his
how many
share.
investors there are.
Oh yeah, and if a lot of times with startup businesses, it's like 2 years before they even turn a profit. So
If that popped up in an analysis, would you want a constructive trust analysis?
you
Or-
can do. I think that's always smart to do, like the equitable remedies, just in case. So like you could say reimbursement or constructive trust, quantum merit, anything like that, and just go over those just to kind of show you know them.
But even with the constructive trust,
Uh-huh.
you, because in a typical constructive trust, you're trying to get it all back plus whatever proceeds are because it's ill-gotten from your funds.
Mm-hmm.
But it would still be community and community property. So when, regardless of it was fraudulently taken from a paycheck, you still can't get the full benefit of the investment plus any profits from it, right? Because
Only
it's still community.
It's still community. Sometimes the judges, if there's bad faith involved, can punish the other party and do like 100%. They don't have to divide it 50-50.
Oh, so they
Bad
can
faith.
still take.
It's within their discretion.
Okay.
A lot of times judges don't like to do that because, the statutes say 50-50 and it's got to be really, really bad faith. Like not like, hey, I told you about it and you weren't interested, but I was still interested and I went and did this. It's got to be like actively concealing and lying and never knew about it. But they can do, and I do that all the time in my workshop where they don't want to disclose things. And like you run the risk of the judge just giving it all to the ex. So
Yes.
you could argue that though. That
This is one of those-
50-50 is the base, like the
Yeah.
base, yeah.
This is like one of those grapevine stories I'm hearing from like the sales, and I'm like, it sounds like, well, just from what I hear, I'm like, it sounds like this is gonna be like one of those War of the Roses type.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just trying to one up each other, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
well, even if he believes it's all his money, it's all his, and even if she tries to hide it, so she gave it away, it's all his stuff.
Mhm.
It's
Exactly.
kind of scary knowing this now.
And you're like, I know too much.
I know too much about these people, I don't want to know.
I know, wait till you, oh my God. I had someone the other day say, they were there to finalize their divorce. And she's like, and I want some kind of restitution. I'm like, why? Like, this is new. And she pulls out her medical chart. And she's like, he gave me this. And I was like, oh my God.
It was like a picture.
Yeah, this is chlamydia. I'm like,
Okay.
well,
Can
if
you
you don't
charge?
have an agreement, you might want to see the judge. Yeah.
Can you charge your spouse for that? Because I know you can do civil lawsuits for that.
It used to, yeah, you could do, there's a huge civil one about, what was it? Like,
Herpes?
yeah, was it herpes for like $6 million?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, but then I think they set it aside and reduced the jury got punitives wrong with the,
Didn't
actual
Impy,
damages.
Slovak Baron, is he known for that?
That's what he does.
No, the Aussie, the hair product Aussie?
No, it was one of the guys who came in. He came into an MCLA.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's Impy from Slovak Baron, whatever.
That was his firm,
He sued that's how he became partner, is that he sued the guy who owns Aussie hair products
Oh,
for
so
giving
that's
his
good. Yeah,
He
okay.
was found chlamydia. I right?
Oh, wow.
And-
Yeah, it
and
must have been a
Got
different
them for
one, but they
millions
had
of
to-
dollars and
Yeah,
became partner.
for a while they were known.
That's what I heard at least.
For that area of law.
Well, no, that's what he came. He came in here.
Sean
One of the,
Murphy, that's it.
yeah, Sean Murphy came in.
Oh, Murphy, that's
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
He came into an MCLA and
Uh-huh.
said he's known as the herpes lawyer. Because he goes after people for giving other people herpes, and I'm like,
Uh-huh. And it can be an assault and battery too, like a criminal aspect of it. Obviously, you want to like pursue that sooner rather than later. But civil is usually the way to go, just because of the money damages. I had that in a family law case, but of course they won't get into that in family law, but it was husband and wife. Wife was a virgin, she gets married, then all of a sudden she has herpes, and he never told her that he had it. So it's one of those things like you didn't disclose it, now you gave it to your spouse. So I just referred her to the DA's office.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what happens as far as, I mean, can she get damages in?
In like a civil court,
But not in civil
not
court.
in family law.
Not in family law, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, they
So just get a civil attorney and sue for bad behavior, okay.
exactly. Yeah, they will be like, that's not really in our jurisdiction. Crazy. All right, Meinhard versus Salmon. More than you wanted to know about joint ventures, right?
This one was a partnership case. It wasn't even family law, and it basically says that you have a duty of loyalty, and that you have to basically share everything with your partner.
I have to say, I like the dissenting in this opinion better. When they're like, look, their loyalty was limited to just what they agreed to do, not extending past it. But I understand why the court Cardozo, and he obviously is well known for his opinions, but why he just didn't want to have any element of bad faith or like concealing anything. He just wanted everything fully disclosed. But I did like the dissenting too. Okay. And just so you know, this chapter I didn't really think applied that much to family law, which is why it's like, let's just kind of skim it, because I don't think the bar is going to ask you any sort of this kind of question. It's mostly corporations and so, okay. People versus Kahane.
So this was a criminal matter. Woman threw a beer bottle through her exit or through her husband's car that was community property. And she ended up getting arrested for vandalism, and her defense was basically, I can't vandalize my own property. And they said, well, property of another includes community property because you don't have a 100% ownership claim in the property, so you can be arrested for vandalism of community property.
And in family court, you can go to court and get an order if you think the other party is destroying community assets.
So you gotta watch more Roses again, because that happens a lot.
Oh yeah, I know, and they didn't even go. They're like, it's not even worth it. But yeah, if you're destroying, like the car, when she destroyed that car, he could have asked for payment for that destroyed car. Even though it's community, because she did it in bad faith, he could have been awarded all of the value of the car.
Yeah, I don't agree with this, because now pretty much the marriage is it's a mini corporation between two people. Because it's a small little entity where it's like, it owns all your stuff.
Well, and someone asked me today, like on the divorce papers, they're like, why does it say dissolution of marriage instead of divorce? I'm like, because you're dissolving a partnership. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, divorce is better? Like, but that's what they want you to have the frame of mind is you're dissolving this partnership, just like a business.
I feel like even after I get married, I want the right to like thrash my own cars, and I feel like
Right.
Yeah, just wait till they're awarded to
it's
you.
my channel. I feel like I should be able to break it or do what I want.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
If I want to take an old computer out and smash it, I should be able to do that too.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know? If I want to kick the copy machine, my copy machine.
Exactly.
And they're like, here's your restraining order.
Look at Alan money anymore.
Yeah, no, that is a true case. Remember the man who, the wife who slammed the plate down and broke it, and she got a restraining order on her. Oh my goodness. All right.
Yeah, you guys have had to help me change the law, so it's doesn't make sense.
I know, right?
Well, apparently the governors can change a lot of laws.
Oh, right.
Did you hear about that? The moratorium?
Yeah. Never mind.
That's all right.
Well, I don't understand how that can be done by fiat in by a governor in California.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care either way.
Right.
But it just seems like it's
Like a lot of power vested into one person.
well, especially because the people just voted on it.
Mhm.
like a year ago or so, and upheld
Yeah,
it.
I think it was. Was it November?
It was November.
Yeah, it's November.
It seems like I mean, the steel seizure case would have them be, even if Congress spoke, like you know the federal case when Truman tried to like put the steel companies back to work, and they didn't come to a conclusion. They said like, you know, the periphery of his power and, you know, the twilight of his power, and like that would be in the twilight, like but the people spoke, so it seems like it's like you wouldn't be able to.
I agree. The only thing, and I don't know for a fact, so I'd have to research it, but I thought maybe a moratorium was like a temporary stay, like a hold to investigate if there's abuses that are being done, like the death penalty.
But no one's being killed anyways.
Exactly.
I mean,
so like what has changed? Like nobody's going up anytime soon to be electrocuted. And I just feel like, and I don't mean for this to be like a political thing, but
is it a political thing? Yeah. I mean, no, it may be.
You know what I mean? And I feel
Fair
like
enough,
it should have been mentioned at some point in time during the election, like this is my opinion, like this is what I'm gonna do when I get into office. But yeah, I know, because I just feel like you said, the state just voted on it, and now it's just this person's like usurping all that, and I don't know how either, or how long. But it was interesting. But it was funny because I was at court yesterday, and of course we don't have cell phones, TVs, or anything. And I'm walking from lunch, and John Patrick Dolan was doing an interview about the moratorium, and I'm like, did what just happened really happen? Like, is this just speculation is going to happen, or was it actually ordered by the governor? And that's how I found out when I was listening to John's interview, walking past him to the courthouse. All right, Wallace.
Basically, she and her boyfriend or husband, they had just gotten married. She came home, found him smoking crack, called him a crackhead, told him to leave the house. He refused and instead destroyed the house. And what?
Whose house was it?
Her house.
Yeah, okay.
But it was still, so he got arrested for assault with a deadly, oh no, he got arrested for, what did he, guilty of felony vandalism and 2 misdemeanors of being under the influence and resisting, delaying, or obstructing arrest. And his defense was basically, I can't, again, be guilty of vandalism because it's my own property in my own house, so no. And the court said, no, a spouse can be guilty of vandalizing community property and the other spouse's separate property inside the marital home. So don't destroy the shit or.
Yeah, exactly.
So can we get around that by like paying my house off in full and making it my own property before I get married? Then can I still crash my house?
Yeah, so if you pay out, you have no mortgage payment. The only thing you worry about are like improvements to the home, like, oh, I put in a great pool, that kind of thing.
Just do the pool alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You put it in before you get married. But yeah, then they won't have any interest in it. It's just gonna be pure separate property.
Makes it a little easier.
I think that the ability to destroy, did you learn in property property class that the ability to destroy the property is like part of the most important sticks in the bundle? Like,
Yeah,
they still talk about sticking in the bundle. Just don't do it in the presence of your spouse or in a way that would cause like fear or apprehension in your spouse.
Well, it's gonna need probably need your spouse's consent to also.
Just so you guys know, might as well just bring this up, like domestic violence restraining orders, they can kick you out of your own home.
Even though it's my separate property?
Even though it's your separate property.
oh really? Okay.
Yeah, in other areas of law, you can't do that with the restraining order, but with the domestic violence, it also comes with a kick-out order.
Only if they're domiciled in the house, right? Because if they're not, then it's.
And I mean,
then
they can.
Don't make a movie like that. Like, go live next door.
The judge can do it, they don't have to do it, but they can. And so a lot of times people come in like, are you kidding me? Like, that lease is only in my name. I pay the rent on that property. They kicked me out. I have no place to go. And the judge is like, sorry, like this is domestic violence. She, has 2 small kids. She's going to stay in there. You're going to continue to pay it.
And then make you pay for it?
Well, I mean, obviously if she would be ordered to pay. If she could pay for it, she'd be ordered to pay. But a lot of times they're like, I don't have a job. And then he doesn't want, his credit ruined. That's a big old mess. Unlawful detainers follow. Ridiculous.
So ridiculous, but I'll give you a reason to cut.
Yeah. So many times people come into our office and say, I need a kick-out order. It's like, well, we don't just do kick-out orders. Do you need a restraining order? Yeah. All right. Well, that one was an interesting one. That was the last case, right? Or there's one more.
There's two.
Oh,
Three.
Spreckles.
Three
Oh
more.
my gosh. Wow. Okay, Spreckles.
So Spreckles basically, husband gave his kids a gift during his lifetime, but the wife supposedly or not supposedly didn't know about. The wife ultimately dies, and so her kids bring a suit trying to get the money back from the other kids that were given by the father, saying that he gave away the mom's community property without her consent. And the rule is basically that a non-consenting spouse's cause of action accrues when the non-mutual transfer is made. However, the statute of limitation begins to run when the non-consenting spouse knew or should have known of the gift. So they basically said that because the wife in her will only gave property to the two children who did not get anything from the father, that she probably knew, and therefore the statute is run. And she consented by omission.
Wow, interesting. Terrible kids.
What was the gift?
Money. It was a couple $1 million.
Very small.
Yeah.
In 1916.
Wow. I don't feel bad anymore.
We still have a Spreckles mansion in Coronado. That's the sugar company, Spreckles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the Spreckles.
I'm trying to see if I can. I guess it doesn't say how much it was. But I thought it was.
I thought
I thought it did.
it might have been in the beginning. Let's see.
I feel like some interesting arguments people make up.
Oh, no, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, $25 million in 1916 to two of his 5 children.
Did the other three deal like everything else?
Well, the other 3 gave, got whatever the mom had left, but I guess it was nowhere near 25 million.
The tier.
So how long does statute of limitations go on now?
I think what made this one different was it was like a probate gift.
Well, no, he gave it to him before he died, and then he died,
And then she tried to.
and then her kids tried to get it back.
He died in 1908, according to Wikipedia.
Oh.
And when's the case date?
1916.
Oh, so it was like 8 years. Probably more than that. Less than that.
Yeah, at Anna's death, the 2 donees were sued by the other 3 siblings, hoping to avoid the $25 million gift.
Probably spent it bad.
Mm-hmm.
They spent $25 million in 1916.
One really nice yacht.
A house was like $1,000.
Buy all the houses.
I know.
25. 250 houses.
They're gonna buy this town.
That's 2,500 houses you could buy. You could buy a town, yeah.
And then tier, this one.
So this one was a life insurance issue about that a person had absolute power of disposition to give out their property other than testamentary. This was a testamentary case. He had a life insurance policy that the wife was the beneficiary. The husband, during his life, changed the payout from a lump sum to a annuity payment.
After he died, the wife was super sick and sued the insurance company to get the lump sum payment of at least her community property half, which was $10,000 of the $20,000. And the insurance company said no. And the court basically said that you have the right to disposition of your property except when it's testamentary in nature. And they said here he was not just changing the contract of his life insurance policy, he was making a testamentary disposition of his property, and therefore it was void because he couldn't do it without her consent.
Mm-hmm. Which it seems a little strange, but
Testamentary disposition is void without spousal consent.
yeah. Like you'd think it made me want to see
I feel like it's till death do you part.
They
They should just,
just stop.
you don't boss her around after that.
I feel like both spouses should have signed it, and then any amendments made to it, both spouses should have signed it, which I think is essentially what they're saying. And I think that's what they do nowadays anyways to cover that. So like both spouses consent to any changes. Lazine.
Okay, so this one's kind of
This one,
convoluted.
yeah, this one was so dense.
So basically what happened is husband and wife bought a house together, got a mortgage on the house together. The husband, in turn, forges the wife's signature, gets a fake notary to notarize it, gets a different loan on the house from Security Pacific, pays off the community mortgages on the house with the Security Pacific loan. Plus, on top of the loan, he also took out an additional amount. So basically, he spent $106,300 on the original mortgage, and then he paid off some that was for the community, and then the rest went to whatever he spent it on. They didn't say. He ultimately also obtained, without his wife's knowledge or consent, a $100,000 line of credit on the property, which he advanced $60,000 on. Basically, when the wife found out about it, she was pissed, filed to get the basically the deed that Security Pacific held voided, and she sued to dissolve the marriage. So the deed suit got finished first. They said that it was his responsibility, so they went and sued the husband, got a judgment against the husband. They filed and recorded the judgment against the husband. And when they filed and recorded the judgment, it attaches a lien to any property that he owns within the county.
Right.
And so then they end up getting the divorce. In the divorce, she's given the house.
With the lien on.
And then she goes to refinance the house, finds out that Security Pacific has this lien on the house. And she said, why am I responsible for the lien on the house when it wasn't even taken out for me? It was taken out by my husband without my consent illegally.
And all that had been established in the court, the forgery and the notary and all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so basically California said, yeah, we understand. Yeah, we understand that this is a shit outcome.
They kept saying it over and over, like, we're sorry.
But they said we have to protect the creditors. It's an innocent creditor somehow. And therefore the lien stays on the house, and she has to go back to the family judge to get a community reimbursement from the husband for the amount that the lien was for on the house so that she could pay off the lien.
Right. The court concluded ultimately it's still a community liability.
It still said that they were a bona fide creditor.
Right.
Which
So,
I actually understand.
But I did see something that looked good. Let me see if I can find it. And they were saying that, plaintiff can go back to seek reallocation of the community property. So I thought that was good. It's like, well, maybe there's some other asset we can give her to kind of make up for this wrong to her. So they could reallocate some community property where she wouldn't walk out like damaged. So that was good. I kind of like that case. It was very dense though.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
They had like 3 different like issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't review to determine whether, and then it's like we also have to first consider, and then we have to consider this, and the other issue is this, and then there's this issue also.
And all you really need to know is the community's liable for those debts.
Yeah.
And the court can, like they said, try to seek a reallocation to make it fair if there was bad faith. Now that's like classic bad faith where it was forged, you had a notary involved, and like the fraud. It's ridiculous.
How do you even become a crooked notary?
You have to do like an exam and.
Yeah, no, we have our notary stamps. That's
Oh, sorry.
Basically,
How
you
did
say,
you-
all right, I'll notarize this and you give me 10 grand.
then that just covers the lawsuit you're gonna get on your door eventually.
That's it.
Exactly.
Just be like, I didn't know they gave me the wrong license or something.
What did I do?
Just hit the exit at the top right.
Uh-huh.
Like, I thought it was the woman that came and signed it. I thought it was
You're like, I checked IDs, right? You can have some that look like her. Well, but then you have to do the thumbprint too. So I don't know.
I'm saying it's not that easy. Just call the notary today, guy.
I did have a case where the husband claimed that it was a forgery, and you're like, you got the thumbprint, ace. You know, like, you're a cop, you should know this stuff. Do you guys have to use the restroom at all? You're good? Okay. Should I wait? I should probably wait. Since he did all the cases, for a favor to me, I'll wait. You'll be like, really, you guys? Oh, and next week, Barry's, Professor Mac will be here, so it'll be a lot of fun. Does he keep you till 9 o'clock, Barry? No?
No, it was,
We're done.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't recall, it's like a normal time.
Oh, okay. I got this email,
nothing
like, it
stands
was
out.
so late.
Oh,
Because he was still under the whole, like, Irene told us to stay till 9. So he
Yeah,
was under that idea, but
Right.
they stayed later than usual. But
we stayed later than usual, but I don't think it was like all the way till 9.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
all the way
yeah.
till 9, so we left when we were done.
oh, that's good. That's good. He's funny. We waited for you, case presenter.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is just chapters 3 and 4. You're only going to be quizzed on chapters 1 through 4. So you're like 5 and 6, don't even worry about that. So chapter 3, just my notes and highlights. Separate property, Family Code section 778. Separate property of a married person includes all of the following: all property owned before marriage, all property acquired by the person after marriage by gift, bequest, devise, or descent. That's just inheritance. And the rents, issues, and profits of the property described in this section. So any separate property, rents, or issues or profits will continue to be separate property.
Does that include property after date of separation?
It should, yeah, it should. I took this from the book, so, but it should include anything after the date of separation. So that's a good catch. California Family, see, you know this stuff. California Family Code Section 770B gives a separate property owner the right to convey separate property without the consent of the other person's spouse, a right known as exclusive control. So you don't have to get anyone's permission to give away your stuff. There's something that you guys get in California. Gifts require 3 elements for a valid gratuitous transfer. The donor communicates a present intent to make the gift. The donor delivers the gift, that should be to the donee. It would refuse to let me write donee. I had to do it like 3 times. And then here, the donee accepts the gift. The law of gifts allow a donor to put one more condition on title transfers. The donor retains a reversionary interest in the gift in the occurrence or non-occurrence of any event. Absent full disclosure of the condition, the donor retains no right to the gift. So like you can make a conditional gift to somebody and like, if you do this, I'll give you the gift. You didn't do it, you don't get the gift. But if there is no disclosure that you put a condition on it, you have no right to get that gift back. Cash gifts that are deposited into a bank account become sums on deposit in a demand account. As such, they are presumptively community property in character. Remember, we went over that. So anything you have in your bank account that you're both on title, we're going to assume it's community property. A party has a right, though, to confirm separate property deposit either by tracing or by agreement. The case of George versus Ransom, the question was whether a husband's creditors could reach the dividends that were generated by wife's separate property. The answer is no. Those dividends are not community property in nature just because they were received during the marriage. And remember, that case is like, what's the point of having separate property if someone else can come and take it that you had no dealing with? Personal injury claims. California Family Code Section 780 is a special community property provision. It characterizes as community money and property received for personal cause of action that arose during the marriage. California Family Code Section 781A confirms as separate property money and property received for a personal injury cause of action that arose before or after the injured person's marriage. And California Family Code Section 780B provides a right of reimbursement for expenses that were paid on behalf of the injured spouse by either the community property or the separate property of the non-injured spouse. Personal injury cause of action against a third party that arose during marriage must be pursued during the marriage in order to produce Section 78 community property. And I always think that's kind of funny because you know how the presumption is, well, it's community property that's going to be awarded as separate property. So they make a big deal about it has to occur during the marriage to then just be given to the other, the injured party that is separate, unless there's other circumstances that warrant a 50-50. If the injured person does not sue the tortfeasor before a dissolution petition is filed, then the cause of action is left to the control of the injured spouse. That's not something they share any kind of management or control over. Family Code Section 780, money and other property received or to be received by a married person in satisfaction of a judgment for damages for personal injuries is community property if the cause of action for damages arose during the marriage. Family Code Section 781, separate property, money or other property to be received by a married person in satisfaction of a judgment for damages for personal injuries is the separate property of the injured person if the cause of actions for damages arose as follows. After the entry of a judgment of dissolution of marriage, while either spouse, if he or she is the injured person, is living separate from the other spouse, it's likely like a date of separation. Reimbursement rights and a cause of action against spouse during marriage is a separate property of the injured spouse. So like any kind of personal injury that my spouse caused upon me is going to be my separate, even though it occurred during marriage. California made a big deal about no imputed contributory negligence as a matter of law for the spouse, but the third party tortfeasor cannot raise the contributory negligence of the other party, but the spouse can use it as a defense and a third party tortfeasor right of contribution when the defendant cross claims against the other spouse. So it comes up, but it's not necessarily something that can be imputed, but it is going to be used if the defendant cross claims against the other spouse. Family Code Section 70 creates a special community property category that shall be assigned to the injured spouse as separate property at dissolution. There are two exceptions to this mandatory assignment rule. One is commingling, so you guys remember this case. This was like probably the most contested case that we read. The special 780 special community property becomes confused with Family Code Section 760 ordinary community property. And the 780 community is transmuted to 760 community property by operation of law. What that means is like you've taken the special award and you've messed it up so much that nobody can figure out what's separate, what's community. So it's been commingled beyond repair. The other one is fairness. Family Code Section 2603 authorizes a court to divide California Family Code Section 780 community property at dissolution if justice requires. It is a narrow grant of discretion that if exercised mandates an award of at least 1/2 of the settlement to the injured party. So the injured party will always at least have 50% of it, And you saw that one case, it's like a very narrow defined way of saying we're gonna take that personal injury and split it down the middle. It would be interesting, that might come up like on a bar exam, is what circumstances would that personal injury award be divided. The party against whom enforcement is sought, this is the premarital agreement. The party against whom enforcement is sought, if unrepresented by legal counsel, was fully informed of the terms and basic effect of the agreement, as well as the rights and obligations they were giving up by signing the agreement, and was proficient in the language in which the explanation was provided, the agreement, and conducted at which the agreement was written. So this is basically saying, look, I asked you to get an attorney, you won't get an attorney, now I'm gonna have to break it down in simple English or whatever language you're proficient in to explain what obligations you have and what rights you're giving up. That's if someone refuses to get an attorney. You're gonna have to do like you were saying, well, why can't we just have it all prenup for kindergartners? That way everyone understood what they were signing. This explanation shall be memorialized in writing and delivered to the party prior to signing the agreement. So you've got your prenup, then you've got your kindergarten version, and you're going to deliver it to the other party before you sign the prenuptial agreement. The unrepresented party shall, on or before signing the premarital agreement, execute a document declaring they did receive the prenup for kindergartners and who provided that to me. And also you have to make sure the writings were not executed under duress, fraud, undue influence, or lack of capacity to enter into the agreement. The court can also invalidate the prenup on other relevant factors the court deems relevant. So it's like the catch-all.
Well, prenups are always just kind of duress. Like, sign this or we don't get married.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Like, you've already sent out, and yeah, you only have that 7-day period really to review it, but there's no other, like, this needs to be presented 3 months before the wedding. Someone could actually give that to you, like 2 weeks before the wedding to say, sign this. And what are you going to do? Like, the announcements have been sent out. People already bought your gifts.
Well, it depends. If she's richer than me, I'd cancel the wedding. I'll cancel it.
Yeah, exactly. But I do agree, like, they're always under, or a lot of them are under, like, an element of duress. Damages awarded defined as money received or purchases made with the money received. So that was like the personal injury award. That damages not necessarily mean just the money, but like the trailer park home that we purchased, that was going to be part of the damages for personal injury. Family Code Section 2603 supersedes the ordinary rules concerning joint form title. So a personal injury recovery received from a spouse, if the injured spouse is the injured spouse's separate property. So like, you hurt me, I get to keep all the money that I got from you hurting me. I don't have to share it, even though it's during the marriage. The non-injured spouse is found to be the proximate contributory cause of the personal injury or domestic violence. Attempted murder of a spouse. The injured spouse shall be entitled to an award to the injured spouse of 100% of community property interest in the retirement and pension. The benefits of the injured spouse. So I don't have to divide my pension. You hurt me, I don't have to pay my abuser. So that's essentially what the terminology is. In civil damages, enforce the judgment against the abusive spouse's share of the community property. So like, if you can't get your money, you can start trying to collect it against your ex's portion of your community property together. When an injury to a married person is caused in whole or in part by the negligence or wrongful act or omission of the person's spouse, the community property may not be used to discharge the liability of the tortfeasor spouse to the injured spouse, or the liability to make contribution to a joint tortfeasor, unless the separate property of the tortfeasor spouse is not exempt from enforcement of money judgment is exhausted. So like, if they've gone after this person and they've run out of all the separate property, then they can go after the community portion of the tortfeasor spouse. This section does not prevent use of community property to discharge a liability if the injured spouse gives consent thereto after the occurrence of the injury. I always thought this was strange because, you know, like the dynamics of an abusive relationship, I just feel like that puts a lot of pressure on the abused party that they can give consent to use community property to discharge the liability. So, earnings and accumulations while living separate and apart. Marriage marks a starting point at which a community property estate can acquire any property. Separation marks the end point for purposes of acquiring earnings and other accumulations. Family Code Section 771 confirms that the earnings and accumulations of a spouse after the date of separation of the spouses are the separate property of the spouse. So that's what you were saying, Victor. Spouses continue to own and hold any community property that they acquired during marriage. Thus, the community property management and control rules are in full force and effect even after the date of separation. So what this means is like we've separated, but we both have the right to manage and control our property even after we separate. So a lot of times you'll see people fight over who can manage and control a community asset. And the court, you have to go to the court, judge hears from both sides, and then determines, okay, usually we're going to have one person manage and control this asset. And they're going to look at a lot of factors, basically who's been doing it for the longest period of time and who has that skill in managing and controlling that asset.
So I think you got to add a new step to marriage where it is a corporation where you buy a car in the name of the marriage, not in each other's name.
Exactly, right? It's almost exactly like a corporation, that the way they handle it. Date of separation, a complete and final break in the marital relationship has occurred. Evidence of the intent and or conduct has been subjective or objective. Remember, this is the one where like the parties get to decide when they separated. So a lot of people have this subjective intent where they've been blindsided by the other party, meaning like, you think we separated a year ago? I think we separated when you handed me these divorce papers. So that they're balancing your subjective feelings, and then objectively, well, what seems reasonable based on the two different subjective feelings? That's kind of where the court chimes in. In determining the date of separation, the court shall take into consideration all relevant evidence. That's everything. That's like Valentine's Day cards and roses and you know, parties where they went out and held themselves out as spouses. Spouses, not third parties, have the right to determine the date of their separation. I like that because the judge ultimately determines the date of separation, which is a third party. But Chapter 4, a person who chooses to form an intimate relationship but not marry are excluded from the community property system. The non-existence of a valid marriage restricts partners to general property claims, except for putative spouses. That's the quasi-community option. So putative spouse is like, there's a, your marriage is void or voidable, but you had a good faith belief that it was a valid marriage, but the court's like, no, this marriage never existed. Like, I married my sister. And so the court's like, oh, well, you didn't know you guys were related, right? We just Ancestry.com proved it. So even though that marriage gets wiped out, a putative spouse is that person who has an innocent belief that the marriage was good. And then they treat it just like family law, dividing things down the middle, but we call it quasi because the marriage didn't really exist. Quasi is like, yeah, it's kind of community property. General rule is that any property can fall into the system no matter the form the property takes. So remember, it's like, it doesn't matter whose name is on the title. Really, they want to know, when did you get it? Did you get it during marriage? And where did the money come from? Was it an inheritance? Was it from separate property? So don't let the title fool you. Vested and contingent interests fall into the community property system. So that is exactly like retirement. So I haven't vested yet in CalPERS, but my husband still has an interest in my contingent retirement, because if I don't vest in a year, then I'm going to get a portion back. We're going to divide that portion even though I had not vested fully. A mere expectancy, however, does not fall into the system because an expectancy is not yet property. So if I expect to get this great bonus and, you know, I'm going to get it in 9 months, we can't divide that bonus yet because that might not really happen. It's not like something that we're just waiting for that 5th year and I'll be vested. This is a may or may not happen. These were some of my favorite ones. 2 valuable assets that are excluded from the community property system. Education that enhances its holders' earning capacity and talent. So remember, your education that has enhanced your earning ability and your talent are not divided by the court. That's some good news, right? That's one thing they just don't touch. Education that enhances its holders' earning capacity. A professional degree is excluded from the community property system on the theory that it's too speculative to quantify. The degree is property, it belongs to the holder. And the community is reimbursed with interest for its direct contributions to education. So the community reimbursement is a statutory right, not a matter of judicial discretion. So they have a right to be reimbursed for the direct contribution. Direct versus indirect contributions. Direct contributions are entitled to community reimbursement, and just an example of what direct looks like, tuition, fees, books, other necessary items and expenses of education. Indirect contributions, like, well, you went to school and I had to work as a waitress and I paid the rent, I paid our health insurance, I paid our car payment. I did all of that so you could get this degree. That's indirect, and where that's considered is for spousal support. So they might not give you any contribution or reimbursement, but they will take that into consideration when trying to figure out what's fair because you worked so hard to put them through medical school. We're going to give you some extra form of spousal support on those indirect things. Community property not entitled to reimbursement if there's an express written agreement of the parties to the contrary. And so that would be like, yeah, go to law school, we'll pay your tuition, I'm not going to seek any kind of reimbursement from you. Reimbursement is the exclusive remedy for professional education or training during the marriage. So like this is it. As far as your professional degree, reimbursement's the only way you're going to get any money out of it for direct contributions. Go past that.
I think you skipped 17 and 18.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I didn't think I touched it, but it went by really fast. 17, you said?
Yeah, 17
Okay,
and then 18 also.
All right, thank you. The reimbursement belongs to the community, not only the non-student spouse. So like you're reimbursing what you both paid, so you're going to get a portion of that money back. To half of the reimbursement belongs to you, the student. It's owned by the spouses in halves. Family Code 2641C lists 3 mandatory offsets for reimbursement. A court shall reduce or modify the community reimbursement if the community has substantially benefited from the education. So if you've acquired all these wonderful community property assets and bank accounts, and you've already substantially benefited from the $12,000 you spent on their law school education, that will either reduce or significantly modify how much money you're going to get back for that, because you've already been well taken care of because of the degree. The community contributed to the education of both spouses, like you went to school, I went to school, and it's an offset, it's a wash. Or the community's contribution reduces the student spouse's need for spousal support. So if I'm like a CEO and I put my our musician husband through school and they make a pretty decent salary, but I make so much more money than him, I'm not going to be able to get the community portion of what we directly spend on his education because now I don't have to pay them spousal support because of that degree. So I mean, that seems to make sense. It's pretty fair.
So it basically just says that in those 3 instances, the community doesn't get reimbursement, right? Or they can
Just
modify it?
reduce or modify.
Okay.
Because it's a statutory right, but the number is where they have a little bit of discretion.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's in that form, you have to actually hit it on the left-hand side.
Oh, is that it? The
Like,
site?
no, you have to like scroll down more and then hit the next slide. Like you did to get to slide 17.
On the right.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, okay. I gotcha. Oh, I see. Because this is up here.
Yeah.
Right? I see. Okay. Thank you. California uses a rebuttable presumption to help identify if a degree has realized its economic value. So this is where they determine whether or not you've already benefited from this degree enough. We're not going to make someone pay the direct exact value. Both presumptions affect the burden of proof. Presumption number 1, the community has not substantially benefited from the community contributions to the education or training made less than 10 years before the commencement of the proceeding. So that's easy to remember because like those short-term marriages, like, you know, you just got out of law school, you're taking any job you can get, you're not making much money, but you're getting a lot of experience. They're going to say more than likely your spouse has not benefited yet from your education because you're still kind of scraping to make it. Then presumption number 2, the community has substantially benefited from the community contributions to the education or training made more than 10 years before the commencement of this divorce. And they're saying by 10 years, you probably made it. You probably have already made like as much money as you're gonna make. And so we're gonna assume that the marriage has already benefited from your labor. That was a result of your education. Are we on 19?
You already did 19.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Goodwill, okay. The goodwill of a business is property. So goodwill as a divisible asset does not exist apart from the business or professional practices to which it's attached. So property, goodwill, that's like all together. Now they're separate, but they're still an attached thing. You can't have goodwill without a business property. Goodwill is transferable from one person or entity to another. Education and talent cannot be transferred. It's either something you have or you don't have. So that's always kind of the goodwill versus talent, the movie producer versus the lawyer. So those are usually based on professions too. Almost done. Valid, void, and voidable marriages. So a void marriage, bigamous marriage, and incestuous. So bigamous means obviously you're married to someone and then you get remarried and you're not divorced from your first spouse. So those will be void. Second one is incestuous. We realized we're relatives, like closely related relatives. Avoidable marriage, you'll see some examples are fraud, unsound mind, physical incapacity, force. You see bigamy again in underage, like you just weren't old enough to get married. The reason why bigamy is under void and voidable is sometimes you can correct this. And the way to correct it, and I've done it many, many times in family law, we thought we were divorced. The judge granted our divorce. They didn't file the required forms. They didn't file the judgment. So without that judgment, you're not legally divorced. How I can correct that is have the judge sign that divorce judgment after it's prepared and date it all the way back to when they thought they were married. So that's curable. So you can opt, if both parties agree, to fix that. If you don't agree to fix that, you're like, no, you're still married to someone else. I don't want to be married to you. I want it to be declared void. That's your option too.
I have a question about the underage one.
Sure.
So, so what is it when your contract, once you become of age, can you ratify it, or what is it called?
Yeah, ratification.
So can you do that with the marriage? Yeah.
For underage. So if you're underage, but you're okay with it, you don't have to come back and ask that it be declared voidable, as long as you're okay with it. Like the government's not going to jump in and be like, you're going to get divorced, your marriage is voidable.
Well, that was the thought of Liar Liar, the movie, right? Because
Gosh, I haven't seen that in a while. We should watch that.
I saw it.
That's a good point though, because they were adults and continued to be married.
Right.
At that point, do they ratify the marriage? Or
No,
can't
it's
you
like
go
a
back in
statute
time
of
and say,
limitation.
well, when we did get married, I was 17, but
Yeah, it's a statute of limitations. Like you have a short period of time to raise it
okay.
after you become an adult.
Oh, okay.
So once you're an adult, and it's something short, it's like 6 months a year, where you've got a short amount of time to be like, I wasn't okay with this. I want it to be declared voidable. Yeah, and we even have a form, court loves their form, a form that even if you're underage, you can get the court's permission to marry. So like it's in the extra added level of protection.
Right.
But I've only done them twice in 15 years. And the parents have to agree and the court has to order them to premarital counseling. But I've only done them twice. So, but yeah, it's like a statute of limitations. Once you become an adult and you don't raise it as an issue, it's gone forever.
There's no form for underage drinking yet.
If your parents agree, they're gonna go to jail with you.
You got my daughter pregnant, you're marrying her.
Yeah, I think that's how it started.
Shopping weddings are legal.
I know how it happens. I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure. And I've only done 2, and no one's disclosed to me that they were pregnant, and I can't ask. But I'm certain that's why that's there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was only because in the movie Liar, after he said they found out she was like underage 17 because she lied. I was like, the judge was like, oh, he's right. She's still under 17, so she gets half of the prenup is void. But I'm like, no.
Well, that might be like the inability to contract.
Yeah, but then,
you're
but
17.
even like that, it's like ratification afterwards. You know, afterwards when you stay married, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't benefit
But
from
you know
the
they don't
wrongdoing.
like prenups.
Well, even if on a prenup, if she's underage and she lies on the prenup, she can't benefit from her wrongdoing, right? If she lied to the spouse saying, I am of age to contract.
That's a good question because I wonder if it becomes more like a statutory rape kind of situation.
Yeah, no,
Like you
because
don't have the ability to contract, so you don't really have the ability to commit fraud yet.
yeah, that was the whole thing of
Really?
Liar, because as soon as she was like,
Uh-huh.
you know, they found out she was underage, and like, she was
Right.
like 17 in a couple months.
I think you could argue either side, obviously, right?
That's
You know,
what-
like, hey, no, you committed a fraud on this person,
Just,
and then maybe you could ask for a nullity based on the fraud,
yeah, just fraud.
and
like
then no good
ratification.
faith
That's-
on her part. Yeah, you might be able to get around it that way. Like you have to connect the dots for the judge on how to get to that, like nullity fraud. She didn't have a good faith belief that the marriage was valid because she was underage.
Also, she didn't know she couldn't do it underage in the movie because there's no sign saying she didn't know what she was doing. So,
Gosh, I can't remember the movie. I don't remember. Did they say like she had a fake ID?
she had a fake ID to get married, so
So she knew.
she knew.
Yeah, she knew she wasn't. Yeah, I'll have to watch the movie again and see.
I was like, the judge ruled too quickly. There's still a bunch of counter defense.
Right, exactly.
But just to close the movie up, like, oh, you win.
Right.
Telling the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it always comes back to like you were underage, so did you really have the capacity to know that you were committing fraud? If you don't have the capacity to enter into a contract, and would it be unjust? But again, with prenups, they're not fans of them, so if they could find a way to declare it invalid, they will.
Mm.
Yeah, so maybe, but I'll watch the movie again. I'm sure I have it on Netflix somewhere. Putative spouse, parties believed in good faith that their marriage was valid.
Does it have to be both, or can it just be one?
It can be one. A lot of times it's just one. It can be both. Like the situation of brother and sister, like, oh my God, we're related. We both have good faith, right?
Sorry, sis.
I know. But a lot of times it's just
I didn't
one.
know he was my brother. I did.
I saw my friend showed me a World Star video yesterday.
Right? I mean,
It's so creepy.
Well, my friend showed me a World Star video yesterday, and it was this guy who's drunk off his ass, and he's getting interviewed at Mardi Gras, and he's like, yeah, me and this girl, we were together, we were hooking up, and he's like, so then I told my mom, I met this great girl, and I brought her home, and it was my cousin. And I'm like,
it's still legal.
I'm like, And they're like, our parents freaked out on both of us because they both knew it. And I'm like, oh my God.
That is so true.
Let me keep the assets in the family, though.
I know.
Well, and that's happened, like, I mean, it's not common, but like if you've had a child and then you gave that child up for adoption and then like they come back in the same circles, you know, and they get married and they're like, oh my God, this is the child I gave up for adoption. That's kind of where
My grandparents are legally cousins, even though my grandmother was adopted. Oklahoma.
That's fine.
You're like, oh, so we're like, oh,
But she's
okay.
adopted, so they're not actually.
It was a small
Right.
town, and she was actually.
Yeah, I
related,
mean, at
so-
least they didn't grow up together. That's where it gets weird, is like when you know your family, you know?
So you gotta give up for babies in a different
No, he's from
state.
Texas, she's from Oklahoma. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that used to happen all the time. I mean, look at Roosevelt.
What's the story there?
Eleanor Roosevelt was his cousin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, it's the whole thing. But her maiden name is Roosevelt. Surname's Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh.
I mean,
I should raise
it's
some plans
clearly.
there.
Yeah, it's something you have to read about it. It's pretty interesting. Like, his mother hated her. And so she's the aunt, but she hates Eleanor Roosevelt and thinks that she's ugly. She looks like a little old lady. And always wanted something different for her son. But, let's see.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah,
His
so
polo, beggars can't be choosers.
I think that's kind of what he was thinking, like, yeah, this works. Good faith is case by case, subjective and objective belief, subject to the totality of the circumstances. So I think the one that was the like most far-fetched case that we had was when the woman got her divorce judgment and it was denied. And like she got it, but she didn't open it up to see if she was actually divorced or not, you know? So it's like, come on, you had to open up the envelope, it said rejected, you're still legally married. So it can be really unreasonable, but if that person's like, no, I really thought, I didn't know, then the court has to take that into consideration. Putative spouse can elect to use family law code. You still divide it 50% regardless of the bad faith of the non-putative spouse. So like the guilty party still gets half of their stuff, even though they, you know.
That's a positive way of looking at it, but really they're losing half their stuff.
That makes more sense to me.
Looking at the bright side of it.
That's right. And this is Marvin, and then we're gonna end here. It's not really 8:40, right?
No, it's 7:20.
Okay.
Let's just say it's 8:46.
It's like,
Take a
it's
picture
not
of that.
8:40.
Like I left at 8:40.
This was my subjective belief. Chapter 4, intimate non-married cohabitants. So the issue of Marvin was whether a non-married cohabitant could enforce a verbal agreement for property division and support in a civil court. See, everybody's taken off.
Because it's midterm.
Yeah, so the court established the following framework. Distribution not covered by the Family Law Act because they're not married. We can't cover it. Non-marital partners can enforce agreements between them except to the extent those agreements are in exchange for sexual relations. Like the prostitution never allowed.
Even if we're
Even if you're married or not married, even if you're boyfriend and girlfriend. But I mean, obviously, you know that comes with the relationship. So it would have to be something really well spelled out. Like our agreement is based on this many times per week. And I'll give you these diamonds in exchange for this many times per week.
That's
Those
okay, as long as
contracts
it's
should
not
always
writing.
be verbal.
And
Oh,
little
okay.
side note, Jackie Kennedy, when she married Aristotle Onassis, had a prenup, and they had he had a minimum amount of times they would sleep together, like a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not enforceable, but still, like they signed it, they agreed to it. Creepy.
Principle.
I wonder how much it was. Just curious.
It wasn't much. I think it was like twice a month, but I mean, it was much
Oh, she
longer.
can do that.
It's Wednesday, you're running out of days. Come on now.
There's
It's
only
the end of the month,
20
you only do it
days in
once.
February. And if there is, absent an express written agreement, the courts can and it should inquire into the conduct of the parties to determine whether it demonstrates an implied agreement, an agreement of a partnership or joint venture. So this was like the fact pattern I gave you, like where all the facts looked like, you know what, these were committed people. Everybody thought they were committed. They lived their life like spouses. So that's what they're going to look at too, is the conduct, regardless of whether or not they have a written agreement, an oral agreement, or even an implied one. If there's no express, implied, or tacit agreement between the parties and the facts warrant, the court may also employ the doctrine of, and here's that quantum merit, equitable remedies such as constructive or resulting trust.
What's the resulting trust? So it's like the amount of work that you put in, you can be the value of your labor.
Yeah, that seems like
I don't understand. Like, how do they apply that to this?
They do have like a formula for that. Like how many years would the, and it's awful. I think they talked about it a little bit in Where the Roses, like trying to determine how much their skill was worth. Remember, they're like, are you saying that my skill was the same as our housewife's skill when he calculated?
Oh, yeah.
That's the resulting
okay.
trust. And she's like, are you saying I have the worth of Gloria? And he's like, no, that's what
I told you
that was it. Yeah, see, I love that movie.
I just use it as a baseline.
Yeah, like don't start there. But that's it. You guys are done.
Okay, that sounds so bad.
Not so bad. No, it's stuff you already know. You already know the personal injury stuff, backwards and forwards. And I just think that case with the trailer really kind of hit home with that. But did you have any questions?
Yeah, so you can marry your first cousin now. That's something.
Yeah.
depends on the state.
No, because
In California. Yeah.
yeah, in California, right? Because a friend of a friend, he was
Your
just on
family
marriage. No, this is a friend of a friend. This is true separation.
Hypothetically a friend.
Hypothetically, a friend of a friend. Do you like hide his ring? Turn his ring around.
The family didn't agree, but he insisted on marrying his cousin. When they got married, and the family laughed when the priest started bringing these two families together. It was like the same family.
Like they just sat down the aisle, not on like either side.
Yeah, it wasn't sides. It was like the same.
Yeah, no, it's legal.
It's weird.
Remember, we were trying to figure out the percentage because it was like you could marry your cousin, but you couldn't marry your grandpa, and like I'm like, what are those percentages of DNA? Because I feel like they'd be pretty similar.
Yeah, we got a grandpa was like they're both 25% or something.
You're just gonna have some mess with babies.
I should just start saying that like leave out the second half of the sentence about from my grandparents. You say my grandparents were cousins.
Don't disclose they weren't genetically identical.
No, they're cousins. It's not a lie.
Yeah, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, my grandparents were cousins.
Well, under that logic, I mean, what if it's like your sister, but she was adopted or something?
But that's really close, man. It's still creepy.
It's creepy, but is it illegal?
No.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be illegal.
Well, and you know what? I had a case. I know I always say that. I had a case where a woman married her stepbrother, and they were raised together.
Who's that actor?
Oh.
Married his adopted daughter?
Yeah, Woody.
Woody something.
Woody Allen?
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen,
I'm like,
yeah.
Woody Harrelson? That's not it. Woody Allen married his.
He married a woman who had a daughter, and then divorced that woman and married the daughter.
Yeah.
Oh.
And raised her
That's effed up.
from a child.
Yeah, raised her from a
Not
child.
like, hey, I
and
met
married
your
her.
mom, but you're cuter. That kind of thing. Like,
But
raised
like, I wonder what was going on in the household
I
before.
know, well, there were allegations of that too, like with other children.
Well, did they let him get away with it?
Yeah.
Didn't they say Woody Allen was like a pedophile or something?
Yeah, well, that's what his child, Satchel, said.
Well,
And that
was Satchel.
If you, if you ever want to read a nasty custody battle, it's Woody Allen and Mia Farrow.
Wants custody of his home, right?
Yeah, because it's all kind of crazy.
All right, thanks for that.
All right, good luck, guys.
First half of the first quarter, or half the semester.
Yeah.
Half of the last semester.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. guys will be fine. I mean, you already know this stuff.
So,
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah. Okay, guys, so have a good evening.